25,000 people from all over the world coming here with lots of capacities and genuine interest who want to contribute to this global challenge. And I care about providing a space where these different people can really connect.
I'm very hopeful not because of the political decisions, but because I see a huge amount of people opening up from all sorts of backgrounds, opening up for that inner transformation and connect with each other and want to work on this together.
The reason we do this work in an interfaith context is that we really feel that the world is at a crossroads and has to make very important decisions about the future of humanity and the planet.
The UN Climate Change Conference, the Conference of the Parties, or COP. An annual gathering of people from around the world, calling for urgent action to be taken to avert climate disaster. Amongst the many voices clamouring to be heard, there are none quite as loud as the voices of young people.
The speciality of youth is they are very open-minded. I would say they are not in a box. They are more open-minded than their previous generations. So they could accept ideas, they could listen to others' voices, they could connect. And because of social media and the technology, they are more connected than ever. Now the idea is to transit from that negative to positive, Negative is like a line and you have to cut it. And to cut it, you have to act. You have seen the plus sign, right? So negativity is like a stagnant phase where you are not active, agile. You are just dormant and sleep. There's no movement, no dynamism. That's negativity. So to cut, you bring an action. And youth is ready for that action. And that's why the plus sign is like that.
What's happening inside is all the governments meeting together to decide about the future of the planet. But what's happening outside is very interesting. There's tens of thousands of people marching for climate justice and a change of policy so that people begin to understand that there are very positive steps we can take to make a change.
The call to action is becoming ever more urgent. Rising sea levels and flooding are becoming more widespread and more severe. Rising temperatures are breaking records the world over, leading to more drought and more wildfires. Deforestation is creating a loss of biodiversity, with many species being pushed to the brink of extinction. It's time to take action.
Resilience has to do very much with the inner being. Because if I'm strong, I can withstand whatever it is that's happening around me, whether it's politics or nature or human beings that are creating problems.
For many years now, a different approach has been quietly gathering momentum. One that sees bringing about change in the outer world by undergoing an inner transformation.
Over the last couple of years, what we've seen is that there has been a shift of consciousness generally because of the pandemic. And I'm seeing that more people are turning inwards. The two most Googled words were prayer and God in the last 18 months. And
Sister Jenti is the additional administrative head of the Brahma Kumaris, the largest spiritual organisation in the world to be led by women. For over a decade, Sister Jenti has been making a case for the link between climate change and our own inner consciousness. An inner shift which also brings about a change in behaviour and lifestyle.
I'm seeing that that shift has also been happening over the last few years. We started talking about inner consciousness impacting climate and biodiversity many years ago. But it was a few years ago that UNESCO actually had as its banner, changing minds, not climate. So I was very pleased that that concept had reached places like UNESCO, but also other people too.
Walking alongside Sister Jenti on her journey with consciousness and climate change are individuals within the Brahma Kumaris who likewise felt called to action. Sonja Olsen is part of the team that runs the meditation centre in Copenhagen. She well remembers the moment when the idea for the Brahma Kumaris Environment Initiative was first conceived.
There was going to be a big climate change conference in Copenhagen 2009, the COP15, and they were going to renew the Kyoto Protocol. So it had big headlines in the newspapers. Actually 2 years beforehand, they started to write about it in the news. And I never heard about the COP conferences before, and I knew environmental problems, but I wasn't that interested. And then we heard about Obama coming to Copenhagen, and all the ministers, the prime ministers was going to come. And I thought Brahma Kumaris should also be part of this movement, this conference, and to bring our contribution and our vibrations. I sat down on a coffee place once and talked to my good friend Lotta about it, and saying we should be part of this.
For the past 25 years, Golo Pilz has been one of the key players in making the Brahma Kumaris headquarters at Mount Abu in Rajasthan, India, fully reliant on renewable energy.
Well, about 12 years ago, the climate conference took place in Copenhagen. And our Sonja, which runs the center in Copenhagen, they had the idea the Brahma Kumaris should participate there. And she sent me an email and invited me, why you not come and become part of that team in order to present our ideas at that climate conference. So I liked the idea very much, and then I joined the climate conference. We became all delegates, and we had a little stand, we had an exhibition. And at that time, people were looking a bit strange at us. What are these yogis doing here at the climate conference? And they told us, we have money, we have strategy, and we have technology, and we fix the climate problem. And at that time, really, people believed it will be just a decision of a couple politicians and we fix it. But as we see, it's not that easy. It takes much more time. It's very, very complex because lifestyle changes are required, change of attitude is required, change of consciousness is required, and that is not so easy to bring forward.
We started a thinking group in Copenhagen, and we met once a month, and we think deeply about the topic, and we taught each other, and we connected to other people worldwide in Brahma Kumaris and asked them to help us to think together with us. And we got a first position paper written called Consciousness and Climate Change. And that also helped the worldwide BK community to understand.
The Brahma Kumaris is an organisation of over 1 million regular students in more than 120 countries worldwide. So how do the changes each of them is making to their own lives impact the environment?
And so spirituality and consciousness and meditation bring that state of fulfillment that can never be experienced through acquisition of property or possessions or even relationships. There'll always be up and down and ding-dongs going on in all of that. And so through this discovery, you realize that you don't need to take more in terms of the natural resources of the world. You can be very content and comfortable with whatever it is you have. Of course, there's a limited point that you require the physical things for a certain level of comfort and well-being. But beyond that state, anything extra doesn't help any further. And you come to this understanding. And so what you're taking from nature changes completely. Your approach to other beings and other forms of life in terms of harming them or being aggressive and violent against them in terms of food and drink, you stop that.
But then we presented this to the bigger international deciding body in Brahma Kumaris. Some thought we are not an environment organization, so we can't engage because we are a spiritual organization. But then we decided, no, we will always remain a spiritual organization, and that is not going to change, but we have environmental considerations.
Dr. Karen Blinko, an academic researcher, lecturer and author, made a special study of the Brahma Kumaris as part of her PhD. She examined how the organisation embraced issues around sustainability and slowly inspired new ways of operating in meditation centres throughout India and around the world.
Brahma Kumaris encompassed both sustainability and spirituality in a beautiful, holistic way that I think is actually key to achieving sustainability. Brahma Kumaris deals with these issues from the inside out. The rest of the world is very much from the outside in. I totally believe that if we are to achieve sustainability, we have to work with our inner environment much more than we do so far. And Brahma Kumaris have done this for many, many years.
One of the primary tasks for the Environment Initiative now is to provide educational tools to our centers in forms of workshop, guided meditation, templates for green retreats, and having them translated to various languages. And we have an environment coordinators in all the different regions. And we have to find a language which engage our community. You see, if I'm visiting a center and I ask anyone, do you want to be environment coordinator for your country or for your center? No response. But if I ask, do you want to be a green angel? Many hands goes up. So it's also about finding a language which brings enthusiasm.
You're spreading it more and more. I also like the way you've been dealing with inspiring your own centers around the world, because recording what Golo, Sonia and Sister Jayanti were talking about, they said we do not force anything on anybody. We allow the emergence, we allow the sustainability agenda to sort of grow organically. And so when people get inspired, we give them permission to then engage in a variety of initiatives. And so slowly this has spread. And I think that it may have been a slow start, but it's really caught up, and the haste with which it's now being communicated, people are engaging in it, is quite extraordinary.
I'm also aware that when you start to meditate, the journey inwards is primary. And it was for me, and it's for many others. But it comes a point where I have to translate that and relate to the world again, and to relate my spiritual transformation, my spiritual interest into the world and worldly issues.
The beginning of the 1990s saw the construction of a new campus at Mount Abu called Gyan Sarovar. Brother Golo was one of the team that built a small retreat house from mud bricks, which they made and dried in the sun. Harnessing the power of the sun to make bricks soon gave rise to a new initiative to generate solar energy.
So when I was living in this house, I came in contact in Germany with a research organization, and then the idea came up to equip this house as a prototype building with alternative energy. So we did a small first project, wind and solar for rural electrification. And that was a project which was sponsored by the German government, by GIZ. And so I put up a small wind generator, I put up some photovoltaic cells, a couple of batteries, and a little measuring program, and with the data logger. And then we sort of logged all the data, how much energy from wind, how much from solar, and so on, and made a nice research report after 2 years. And the project went quite well. It was quite successful. And from that time onwards, we slowly started to go more and more into research and development of renewable energy systems.
This small-scale project soon evolved into another project, to use the parabolic dishes to create hot water and steam to power the campus community kitchen.
Well, then a little bit later, I came in contact with a German engineer who developed solar kitchens. And so the idea came up, why we're not setting up our providing a solar cooker for our community kitchen in Gyan Sarovar complex. And it's based on the Scheffler dish, which had 9 square meter, 7.5 square meter at that time. So we built 2 of these dishes and did some preliminary cooking. This was also a small project and it was successful. And then we built the first community solar steam cooking system based on 24 of these parabolic dishes. And we provided the steam down to our kitchen and we could cook like 2,000–3,000 meals per day by the power of sun. Well, see, the people reacted very positive to solar technology because in India, Surya is a deity. He is part of the deity pantheon in India. And if you use a divine energy to cook, everybody likes the idea very much. And I would say the Brahma Kumaris is administrated by women. And they were very sympathetic to the idea to be in harmony with nature. It fits to our philosophy to be in harmony with the self, but also to be in harmony with nature. So the overall response was very positive and very, very supportive.
Golo's experiments with solar energy began having a real impact on the organisation. Whilst the technology was new, the principle of living in harmony with nature was not. This way of thinking had been there since the beginning.
In fact, what I found was that the senior sisters, the dadis, who by the time I knew them, they were in their 50s and 60s, and of course, by the time we got involved in COP and everything, they were in their 80s and 90s. I found that they actually had a very deep appreciation of our responsibility towards nature and our relationship with nature, because they had grown up in an era at the beginning of the 20th century when in India, the whole concept of nature being sacred was alive. And they were then in an enclosed order for 14 years, in which it was a time of total renunciation of physical comforts and external things, and just focusing and working in the laboratory of the mind and just minimizing their own needs, and desires were not something they were into. And so consumerism had left them completely. And when they came back into the world out there, when centers were being established in the early 50s, again, their lifestyle was so basic, so simple, that it was untouched by materialism. And so for them to understand treading lightly on the earth was very natural. And the principles that the founder, Brahma Baba, had taught them about economy, about reusing and not throwing anything, taking things in a cyclical pattern so that everything was being used in the most worthwhile way. These were actually things that they had grown up with and were ingrained in them. And so it wasn't a difficult thing for them to understand that it was important to let go of materialism and consumerism, and they were anyway, most of them, vegetarian from birth. And so all these were part of their lifestyle.
The support from the senior sisters or daddies translated into support for yet bigger projects. The construction of a third campus, Shantivan, designed to accommodate up to 25,000 people, presented an opportunity to scale up the experiment with renewables.
I was quite happy when this project was completed. The government was happy, we were happy, everything was functioning. And then Ramesh Bhai, at that time he was the financial head of the Brahma Kumaris, he asked me why not to build a big solar steam cooking system in our coming up Shantivan complex. And so after some thought process, then we applied to the Indian government for funding. And then we increased the size of the dish to 12 square meter. And we built a solar steam cooking system based on 84 parabolic concentrator, which produces 3,500 kilograms steam and can cook 35,000 meals per day. And this system we completed in 1999. And that system still, also like the other one, are still working today without any problem.
The final project was the most ambitious yet, to build a 1 megawatt solar thermal power plant at Mount Abu called India 1. generating enough energy to heat and power the entire campus. The project was amongst the first of its kind.
That was like 10 years working for that project, and we had many critical events or moments in this building this power plant. Sometimes we were running out of money. Funding is always a big issue in renewable energy. Sometimes we had very, very serious technological problems because many of the components have been in-house developed, so we really had to design new dishes, new tracking. We had to create our own computer programs, literally, and program computers to control the whole plant, you know, because constantly you have to supply steam to the turbine, so that's quite complex. So it was quite challenging, and once it was ready, we pushed the button, and this huge project started functioning. I would say that was one of the highlights of my life, yeah, for sure.
So the kind of working with the Environment Initiative, and also the work that Golo has been doing for, you know, the past 25 years with his solar panels and photovoltaic discs, is very much an integrated part of the Brahma Kumaris philosophy and fits absolutely perfectly. It's a kind of an extension of the work you're doing already.
Away from the cutting-edge technology of solar thermal energy, another research project was underway called Sustainable Yogic Agriculture. This involved yogis meditating amongst the growing crops to both increase the yield of the crop and reduce the stress amongst the thousands of farmers trained by the Brahma Kumaris in this new, environmentally friendly way of farming.
I was introduced to the yogic agriculture, and I was fascinated by the impact meditation practices had on the crops. The fact that you don't need as much water, don't need as many fertilizers, that the nutrients are greater in the products.
There are farmers who come to take trainings. There are government officials who come and visit this land place where the experiments are happening. And other than that, there are farmers in Gujarat, Rajasthan, Punjab and Maharashtra who are practicing this. And slowly, there are other farmers who are watching this and getting inspiration to follow on their leads.
I can see that there are so many papers written on it. I think there's about 1,000 people involved in the meditation practices now in India. And I think, wouldn't that be fantastic if we could spread that around the world and say to the farmers, look, you know, there is another way.
It's not only farmers in India who are feeling the strain. Young people are increasingly feeling a new form of stress, climate anxiety. Shantanu Mandal is the Brahma Kumaris youth representative to the United Nations Environment Programme.
Surprisingly, and it's a good news, that young people are very open to the idea of spirituality, because they get so much to read on internet, they get so much to connect with each other over social media, that they're open to ideas. Unlike some other generations which was quite within their box, the young generation now is out of the box. But this is good, but also sometimes dangerous, because they're out of any kind of box, so they are literally like volatile and everywhere.
I see a tendency in the world, especially for young people, to just give up engagement in the world because they lose hope and they feel it doesn't matter, and you become anxious or you become depressed or you just live your little life. It's very tough for the young people to keep hope, to keep strong, to keep the spirit, to continue to engage. And I feel we as Brahma Kumaris, we can be better in helping people with climate anxiety, climate depression. So I feel we have a big role to play there.
This growing climate depression is something that is also recognised by many of the world's faith-based organisations. Every COP they come together to offer prayers, hope and support, finding the common ground between them for the common good. Valeriane Bernard is the Brahma Kumaris representative to the United Nations in Geneva and the co-chair of the Interfaith Liaison Committee to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change.
What happens is that within the COP, with the climate change or with the environment, Faith people are looking together at environment, at climate. So we are looking at something, trying to bring solutions, a positive vision, a visionary way out. So then it means we can really easily agree on everything. It's a lot easier than if we start talking about God or theology or the differences that divide us. We think about the vision that unites us, because we all basically understand that souls are God's children and we have love for them, just as we understand that nature is everybody's and it's a mother of all of us. And we understand that it is sacred. As Brahma Kumaris, that's our language. So maybe there is a slight different language in each religion, but the heart is the same. The vision is the same. And so it's very nice to be able to work together in that direction.
I'm seeing that from 10 years ago to today, environmental groups are recognizing the spiritual input that's needed. And so faith-based organizations are being invited on all of these platforms now. And I think they've seen the pain, the suffering that's happening through climate change. And they're seeing that whatever we are doing on an external level just isn't enough. Things are not moving in the direction that they should. You take one step forward and it feels as if it's like 2 steps backwards. It's just not going as far and as fast as it should and could.
Clearly, the outlook is an uncertain one. But key amongst the Brahma Kumaris teachings is an understanding that we are passing through a time of global transformation, one that will ultimately give way to a new and brighter era for humanity.
You know, we have the 4 seasons. Where I live in Scandinavia, we have the 4 seasons very clearly. We have spring, summer, autumn and winter, and then we have another spring. And as a humanity, we're also going through the 4 seasons, the spring of humanity, the summer, the autumn and the winter. And at the moment I feel that humanity is in the winter season. It's like the hearts are frozen.
We've always been very aware that we're in a period of transition, and the transition is from dark to light. You could call it from winter to spring, but also from darkness to light. And so we are understanding that as we come closer and closer to times that are very, very critical, and I think we're at that point now, after all the things that have happened through this year, I see that we're at a very, very critical point of transition. And once the transition is over, then I do see that there's again a time of abundance coming. And so I know that that has to happen. There has to be a movement from the dark to the light again. And so that is the vision that I hold in front of me. But I do see that what's immediately ahead of us is a very challenging time.
Sometimes just to stop and take a deep breath and feel the wonder of breathing, and knowing that you breathe the same air as everybody else on the earth. And then stop and look up and look at the blue sky and feel the sense of wonder of being alive. Or you just stop and look at the flower. Take a deep breath and get that sense of wonder again. And that energy which is in the moment and in the sense of wonder, that energy is very important to keep moving forward towards the spring of our humanity and spring of the planet. And in that peaceful moment, I also remember very easily that deep inside I'm a soul and I will live forever, I'm immortal. and my eternal connection with the divine will always be there in the background or in the forefront, and that the global humanity is my family. Those eternal principles of life are easy to remember when I stop. Take a deep breath and look at the sky.
And so, if today I choose to sacrifice little things and my own comforts for the greater good of the planet, it's going to stand me in good stead, because there is going to come a time when things are not going to be available. And am I ready for that? Am I prepared for that? Do I have my own inner capacity and resources inside of me and resilience to be able to go through that without getting into a state of insecurity and upheaval and distress and creating more distress and fear around me? Can I create that state of stability and understanding and resilience spiritually today so that I'm ready to face whatever may happen in the future?
To make sure you become so peaceful that you can hear your inner voice again, the inner voice that says that it will be okay. Whatever happens will be a step forward, and that my voice will make a difference, and my contribution will make a difference. And even though I'm just one person out of 7.5 billion, still my thought matters and my lifestyle matters.
People are so stuck in this material, segregated, disconnected world that they have forgotten to dream about how it could be. And I think that what Brahma Kumaris did, they did not force, Brahma Kumaris not forced the environmental agenda on anyone, but they have inspired. And that's something I also like about Brahma Kumaris. You are always positive. You always see the light in everything. You don't have to run around feeling bad about who you are and what you have done. Instead, you turn it around and say, okay, how can we move this forward and create something that's good for all of us?
Our aim is to bring hope, to bring peace, and to bring love into the climate negotiation process, to make people understand it's not only about technology, about the mind, it's also about bringing in the heart and to bring in positive emotions into the process. We are one family, we have this one planet, and we all have to join hands to save it and to transform it and make it a better place. And our role of Brahma Kumaris may be to serve as an inspiration to this future pathway.
So that's where I feel we can move forward to bring that feeling of empowerment back, the feeling of hope for the future. That no matter what will happen, kindness will matter, love will matter, peace will matter, on my own and together with others.
But the answer, the solution, only when there's a shift of consciousness and you come back to a spiritual understanding, then you can bring about change. And so the vision that I have of a world which is a brighter future for all, a better future for all, only happens through a shift of consciousness.